Thank you all for being here today. I sincerely appreciate all that everyone in the media is doing in our fight against COVID-19. We also know that as we fight this pandemic, that we are going to continue to update you on our numbers, what we are doing to respond, and I think that's critically important. And I'm glad Dr. Dobbs once again is with us today, and we will certainly continue to talk about COVID-19. But I also want to begin today's briefing by addressing another one of Mississippi's crises. After the election, but before I assumed office, Mississippi was rocked by violent riots in our prison. 5 inmates died violently in a single week, and some escaped in the chaos. It was personally horrifying for me and many others across this state and across this country. I personally visited Parchment and other prisons throughout our system. This put a spotlight on our systemic problems at the Department of Corrections. It was a major national story. I said from the beginning, I have no intention of hiding our problems. I have every intention of fixing our problems. Our prison system is broken, but we are doing everything we can to repair it. First, we closed Unit 29 at Parchment, the most notorious section and ground zero for this specific crisis. We have worked to raise pay for our correctional officers. We've done thorough investigative work to uncover waste and abuse by staff. That work has had an impact. I want to personally thank Commissioner Taylor and others who stepped in the gap to help in that effort. I also want to personally thank Kerry McDonald and Jaworski Mallet, 2 current employees that have really stepped up at the department. They've made a difference. I've also said from the beginning that more than just funding or politics or anything else, Mississippi's prison system had a leadership crisis. In the first few days of my term, I had the opportunity to deliver a State of the State address and lay out a mission for our term. I made a promise that day to the people of Mississippi. Here is exactly what I said. All Mississippians must be able to trust that the people in charge of this system are acting with competence to keep them safe. We must be able to trust that the corrections officers operating in these prisons have the tools that they need to do their jobs and that they are compensated fairly. We must be able to trust that this system shows respect to those who find themselves within it. We must administer justice fairly, respecting the dignity of all within our prison walls. It was a great Christian martyr of the 16th century who saw a group of prisoners headed to the executioner and said, "There, but for the grace of God, go I." We must carry that same spirit of empathy as we embark on this mission. We have asked a trusted, diverse group of experts to conduct a nationwide search, to provide me with a recommendation for a permanent solution to our leadership crisis. 2 gentlemen who are at the table today, Mayor George Flaggs and Judge Sean Tyndall, were there that day. I asked them to lead the search. They went through a rigorous process. There were many voices in the room throughout that process. There were those on the right and those on the left, and there were those in the middle. I gave them a simple task. I simply said, go find me the best possible person to lead the Department of Corrections. Not the best possible person in Jackson, not the best possible person in Mississippi. I asked them to find me the best possible person in America. And I believe in my heart that they have found us the best possible person. And I am honored that Mr. Burl Cain, the former warden of Angola Prison in Louisiana, has agreed to serve as our corrections commissioner. Angola was once known as the bloodiest prison in America. It was racked with violence, and it failed the staff, the inmates, and the citizens who relied on it to provide justice. Then, a man named Burl Cain entered the picture. He brought faith, security, safety, dignity, and pride to the prison. They went from beatings to Bible studies. He transformed America's bloodiest prison into the model of success for the nation. Inmates who were previously on lockdowns for fear of violence were now working productive jobs, handling power tools, and moving freely throughout the grounds. They were able to accomplish this by treating even the most violent criminals as human beings who are capable of reform and deserving of respect. He has brought that success story to the world. He is a nationally cited expert in the conversation around corrections. He has brought faith-based programs to the country. In his job interview with us, he raised the need to treat all prisoners with the dignity and respect that they have earned as men and women created in the image of a loving God. I believe that Burl Cain can bring hope to the inmates that are struggling. Time and time again, that was expressed as a sincere goal. He assures me he will ensure that the integrity of our system is upheld. I believe he will make Mississippi proud. At my inauguration, former Parchman inmate 46857, a man by the name of Eddie Spencer, led our state in prayer. He turned his life around and became a pastor who serves in part by helping Mississippians at risk of succumbing to violence and joining the prison population. He joined me then at the State of the State, where I laid out our vision. He is a powerful testament and example of the mission of my administration, to have a Department of Corrections that actually corrects criminal behavior by leading inmates to a life well lived. I believe that under Burl Cain's leadership, we can have more Eddie Spencers and fewer inmates who return to the system. We can treat all Mississippians with the safety, the dignity, and the pride that they are owed as children of the King and residents of the great state of Mississippi, whether they are incarcerated or not. Our motto is and has been to serve for all Mississippi. I'd ask all of you to lend us whatever trust you can muster, because transformation does take time. But the time for action is now, and we are working tirelessly to address the crisis we face in our state and the crisis we face in our prison system. At this time, I would like to turn it over to a man who needs no introduction in the world of corrections in this country, Mississippi's new Commissioner of Corrections, Burl Cain.
Thank you, Governor, so much, and thank you, Mayor Flagg and Judge Tyndall, for leading the team and to interview me and to select me to recommend to the Governor. And I promise to do a great job to help the Department of Corrections, and to do the four components that's essential to have a good prison. That's good food, good praying, good playing, and good medicine. We're going to have those four components, and that's going to balance it out. And so I look forward to the challenge. I look forward to the job, and to lead Mississippi to have a great system. And I thank you, Governor, for the faith and confidence to appoint me as the Commissioner of Corrections. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I want to give a longtime friend of mine, the mayor of the city of Vicksburg, and someone who worked tirelessly for months. We started out with a large number of applicants. Many of them were very qualified. There were a lot of people that showed interest in the job in Mississippi. We appreciate every single one of them for their application, for working through the process. But I wanted to turn it over to Mayor Flagg as the chairman of that committee.
Well, thank you, Governor. Governor, I would be remiss if I didn't just start by saying thank you for the leadership that you provide as it relates to this COVID virus and what you do for the state of Mississippi. And yes, as longtime friend, I want to say to you, on behalf of the committee that you selected, I was honored to serve as chairman, but it was easy because of the fact of the people you selected to serve with me. Those people were very open and honest, and we've done what you've asked us to do. The process is more fair than ever seen. We had a record number of people across this nation that wanted this job. Some people thought that there was other issue why people wouldn't, but I'm telling you, I was overwhelmed with the number of people that wanted this job, and this committee looked at every application and looked at every situation that we had facing us in this crisis or in this situation as it relates to the Department of Correction, and we unanimously came up with the names that we came up with. And on behalf of that committee, Governor, I think you've done a great job in selecting the person. I've had a number of conversations with him. I know of no person at this time that was in that application pool or in this country can do what this man can do if given opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor, for your service to our state, to your service to the city of Vicksburg. For those of you who did not know, Mayor Flaggs was a long-term member of the Mississippi Legislature, served as the chairman of the Corrections Committee in the Mississippi House of Representatives, and certainly was ripe for leading this particular committee. As we went through the process of determining who the best person in America was to serve as the leader of our Department of Corrections, something, as I listened to the meetings, to the comments that kept coming back to me as we look to build out our team, is the leadership qualities in a longtime friend of mine, someone who served in the Mississippi State Senate with me, Senator Sean Tindell. Senator Tindell, and you know, we have a joke over in the legislature, once a senator, always a senator. Senator Tindell, a number of years ago, was tapped to serve on the Mississippi Court of Appeals by then Governor Phil Bryant. He was tapped to lead in that capacity because of his knowledge as a lawyer, his competency. He served in the Senate as the chairman of the Judiciary Division A Committee. He hails from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, from Gulfport. He's a former subcommittee chairman on the Committee of Appropriations in the state Senate, and he certainly stepped up over the last several months in leading and finding Burl Cain to lead our Corrections Commission. And I appreciate his effort. He is a close personal friend of mine. He is a great public servant. He has served from the Mississippi Gulf Coast region as an assistant district attorney. He has represented individuals within the system, and therefore I am absolutely pleased to announce that he has been willing to accept when I asked him if he would serve as the new commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. Now, I want to be clear about a few things. Over the last several months, we have asked Colonel Chris Gillard to step up in his role. I could not be more pleased with his efforts over the last number of months. Every step of the way, every time he has had to step up and answer the call, he and the men and women of the Department of Public Safety and the Mississippi Highway Patrol have done just that. Colonel Gillard is in the room here today. Colonel Gillard, I want to personally thank you for your service to this great state. You represent the Highway Patrol with honor, with respect, and with dignity, and I personally thank you for your service. In addition to that, we also have Lieutenant Colonel Randy Ginn here. Randy has served in that capacity for a number of years, and he also, working with Colonel Gillard over the last several months, has stepped up and made a difference in our state, and I am proud of him. In addition to that, Mr. Pat Cronin has been another person at the Department of Public Safety that has been there, I understand, for almost 40 years, served for many of those years as leading the Mississippi Law Enforcement Training Academy, well respected by people throughout this state. Law enforcement across the state respect him. I want to personally thank Pat Cronin for his effort. But I will tell the people of Mississippi today that I couldn't be more proud that Sean Tindell is willing to step up and answer the call to serve. He is inheriting a group of individuals that care deeply about our state, and I know with his leadership, we will continue to take that department to a new level. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Tindell, our new commissioner of the Department of Public Safety in the state of Mississippi. Sean?
Thank you, Governor. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Governor Reeves for his kind remarks and his faith in me to fulfill his expectations and the obligations required as the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. I look forward to the opportunity to continue to serve the state of Mississippi as the next Commissioner. The Department of Public Safety, as you all know, has a storied history of excellence for our state, and I will work tirelessly to maintain and improve that history of excellence. I also look forward to working with the other branches of government to ensure the safety of not only the fine men and women at the department, but also all Mississippians. As with any organization, it takes everyone from top to bottom to develop a culture of excellence. For my part, that includes leading by example and surrounding myself with like-minded individuals who have the desire to serve the people of this great state. In order to achieve the excellence required of us, there can be no room for big egos and grandstanding. It simply will not be tolerated. What will be demanded is servant leadership at all points of contact within the department and a willingness to work together for the greater good of the state of Mississippi. Over my first 90 days of the department, I will do an overall assessment, meeting with all of the troopers, the different divisions within the department, central office leadership, and others to determine what the top priorities are at the department. I also intend to meet with local law enforcement and prosecutors to hear their concerns and gather their input. And of course, an immediate priority of mine will be to work on improving the delays and problems we've seen and witnessed with the issuance of driver's license through the department. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank my colleagues at the Mississippi Court of Appeals. My law clerks, Lindsay Watkins, Jordan McMichael, and my judicial assistant, Heather Graves, have done an excellent job of helping make me a better judge. And I've learned over the years, whether it be in the Senate, in private practice, as a prosecutor, and now as a judge, that surrounding yourself with hardworking people that demand not only of themselves but of others excellence makes the whole organization work better. At home, I'd like to thank my wife, Claire. She's been a rock for our family, my kids, Sam, JT, Meredith, and Henry. She is the light of my world, and my children are as well, and I look forward to setting a great example for them in this new role. I'm reminded when I look at them the admiration that I saw when my grandfather was alive, Henry Brown. He was a sheriff's deputy in Stone County, Mississippi, and I was always proud of the fact that he served our county as a member of the local law enforcement. And I'd also lastly like to thank my mother, Dora, who has been dealing with the recent passing of my father and is always a constant reminder of me of how important it is to work relentlessly for those around us and our community.